Hello all and welcome to episode 77 of the 3 for 1 Sky Fantasy podcast by fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Following a somewhat subdued weekend, I think it's fair to say, of Sky Fantasy action as the template strikes and Sky managers get itchy fingers ahead of this evening's match and the upcoming game week 30. My name is Fergi and I'm joined as usual by my co-host Paul McAnulty. Paul, are you feeling better? You've not been well this last week.
Nah, dose of COVID. I'm feeling much better now. Last week was a bit of a struggle for me, but yeah, kind of matching my Sky team at the moment. It's, bedridden. That's probably the best way to describe it.
I update our ranks on the slides every week, and they've barely moved since the overhaul. I think they've moved like 3 or 4 places for both of us. It's a tough old slog at the moment, isn't it? What do you make of that, Paul? Do you think that, obviously a lot of teams are similar, we understand that and we know that, but do you think that, people are right to still be kind of slogging it out, or do you think that people, with lower ranks should be looking to make moves soon, or your general thoughts?
Yeah, depends on your style of play. Like, I'm playing quite a few cash leagues this year. I'm doing well in them, so I don't see the need for me to punt. I think my chances of winning the overall game are very, very slight. But if I was looking to make up rank now, I think I would go with riskier mid-price midfield options. So players like Saka, who's only owned by 2.8% of those managers in the top 1,000. So he's got 61 points in his last 8 games. He falls into that category that I mentioned quite a lot with the 2-2-2, and then he'll get a haul, and then 2. I don't like owning players like that, and I prefer playing 5 at the back and getting a consistent stream of points through. But if I was looking to make rank, I would try and punt on 1 or 2 of those types of players. Perhaps ones that have got a lot of fixture, like volume as well. So you've got more tickets to win the lottery, if you like.
Jacob Murphy and that kind of player, yeah.
I was thinking more Saka. Mount would be another one around that. Quite very punty. And then having a look again, even players like Gabriel, I think. He's only owned by 8.5%. That class of differential, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about moving on to Chelsea. Arsenal's got 4 games before the international break. Again, moving on to him, I think, is differential enough that you'll be able to perhaps make up a bit of rank as well. But with those risks come the potential 2-pointers. So it's all about risk management. But if you're looking to try and punt to make up ground, then I think that's where I would be going.
We'll take a look as we walk through the fixtures, and you can maybe highlight a couple of opportunities, Paul, maybe a couple of players as we walk through. Yeah, in terms of my team, nothing exciting. Obviously, had Ward-Prowse in place for Friday, who, 4-pointer, I think it was, doubled to 8. And nothing very exciting on the weekend. Went Kane over Cancelo on Saturday, which obviously worked out well. Gave me a slight rank rise. Bit of a risk, but I think it was worth it against Leeds. It's going to be interesting to see now with Leeds how someone like Rafinha plays, because obviously the way that Leeds have played under Bielsa, the kind of ding-dong style, it didn't really matter before that Leeds were losing most weeks, because Rafinha was, the way Leeds play, they were unlucky not to score against Spurs, I thought, actually, and Rafinha especially was unlucky not to get any returns. It's going to be interesting to see whether they stick with that ding-dong style of play or whether they just totally kind of, lock up, get tight at the back sort of thing, and what that means for players like Rafinha. Well, obviously we'll get to see that on the weekend. And then on Sunday, can't remember, on Sunday, nothing exciting. Oh, it was just Bowen and Kilman, wasn't it? So, and this evening is going to be a Pope Fest, apart from, maybe the old, odd one's got Veghor. So it's been a bit of a boring weekend, I suppose, from a Sky fantasy view. Very little movement, but we'll try and spice it up over the next week. Chelsea in particular, if they win tomorrow evening, I think in the FA Cup, or is it this evening? Either this evening or tomorrow in the FA Cup, definitely play Norwich next Thursday, which kind of opens them right up, doesn't it? So we'll touch on those. For any new watchers and listeners, you are very welcome. If you haven't subscribed yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen and set the alerts so you don't miss our podcasts and live streams, which we do every week. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. Good afternoon, everyone. I can't even pronounce their first names, a jumble of letters, asking about moving on Trossard for Tielemans or Maddison with 14 transfers left. Probably a decent move, I would guess. Trossard, I don't even know he's going to play, do you? And Leicester these extra games now, so yeah, go for that. Good evening, 902 Music Group, Joseph Robinson, Dan Cox. Good evening, Dan. Julian Wardle. Hoping we start today with the medal ceremony from the Hub Olympics. Brownie Sky FF, Glenn Murray, Graham, George Parker, Golden Goal. Says Paul looking spicy in those glasses. Callum McBeath. Are we considering a Leicester player tonight? We'll touch on that now. And Matt Sky FF says, Willa, firstly, the Hub Sky FF Olympics didn't go ahead as Paul had COVID, so I had to postpone my trip up north on the weekend. I have rebooked, Paul. I haven't told you for when, but I had to rebook. Otherwise, you'd have lost the flight money.
It's gonna be a surprise. Just give me a text when you're on the plane.
He is a hint. It's round about the time when you may be coming down south, roughly on one of those weekends. It's roughly about. I have to do it in a certain time frame, so I've done it for the end of March. It's interesting because it could be actually Wales versus Scotland in the World Cup qualifier. We'll see about that. So this afternoon we're going to look at the popular moves made last week. Paul has got a few stats he picked up on some ownership in terms of which players moved last week. We're going to look ahead to tonight's match, Burnley and Leicester. We'll look ahead to Game Week 30. We're answering some questions from Twitter, which we've had a load again. Thank you so much. And updated mini leagues. So firstly, just a quick look at the ownership in the top 1K. Cancelo, 98.3. Salah 96.7, Boehm 95.1. Top three absolutely nailed on in the vast majority of the teams. Paul, you did notice a bit of movement for some certain players in the last week.
Yeah, so I've been taking a note of ownership players and then players that I think are going to move, whether it's managers moving off them or managers moving onto them. So looking at last Wednesday's games when Watford hosted Palace, Burnley hosted Spurs, and Liverpool hosted Leeds. So 4 players I thought would make a lot of movement in there were players moving onto Son and Kane and then moving off Ronaldo and Bruno. So Kane's ownership went from 21.8% in the top 1,000 to 67%. So, and you can imagine a lot of people wouldn't have captained them, or the majority wouldn't have captained them because Salah was playing at home to Leeds that night as well, and you got the team sheets available for that. Son moved from 7.7 to 11.1, so not so much. I thought a few people might go differentiate for either going just for Son instead of Kane, or perhaps going for a double up. With them hosting Leeds at the weekend as well, so maybe like a jump on point there. Ronaldo dropped from 55.8% down to 13.6%, and Bruno dropped from 16.3 down to 11.2. Those managers that did that obviously weren't initially rewarded because Spurs got beat 1-0 from Burnley, but the Spurs assets returned on the Saturday early kickoff, so you got your extra 2 points prior to doing that. On Thursday, so that was Arsenal versus Wolves, I had a look at Kilman, so his ownership jumped up from 67.3% up to 72.5%. I think the majority of people had already moved on to Kilman on the Sunday before, either getting rid of Webster or Laporte were two common choices for getting rid of there. There wasn't much movement elsewhere. I had taken a note of Sa, Ramsdale and Gabriel's ownership, but as I say, very little movement on any of those options. And then on Friday, when it was Southampton at home to Norwich, my guess was that Ward-Prowse and Broja would both go up to 40%. So Ward-Prowse went from 23.2% up to 54%, and Broja went from 19.2% to 32.8%. I thought that had given some consideration about a potential double up and going Broja as well. It's a really nice price point, and would perhaps offer additional moves. And the reason I didn't do it was that I'm really keen to get moved back onto a 5-3-2 formation. And I think that I would happily hold Ward-Prowse longer term. So that's why I've opted to stay with Ward-Prowse and didn't go Broja. Mainly for that reason. I want to keep Salah and Kane up front, and then move to 5 at the back, whether that's Chelsea assets, Arsenal assets, or others that fit in there, and perhaps a Liverpool double up at some point in time, although I don't think a good jump on points till after the international break for that.
Okay, anything more on the weekend at all? What was it? Notice us. Sorry,
yeah, there wasn't much. I think when you come to Sunday and it was West Ham hosting Wolves, I think people had already picked up Kilman that wanted him at that stage, and mostly everyone was on Bowen captain anyway.
And this evening, then, looking ahead, 73% of managers have Nick Pope in their team. So you would imagine that most of them would captain him. Weghorst is in 11.8. But we've had some questions about jump point for Leicester potentially this evening. What do you think about jumping on a Leicester player this evening? And if you do think it's a good idea, which ones would you target?
I think if I had a lot of transfers, would consider a move. Moving off Bowen or moving off Gallagher might be a good option to move on to Tielemans or Maddison. I wouldn't be going for anyone outside the midfielder slots. I think that 5-3-2 is going to be the best formation moving forward. And if you already own Broja, then 4-3-3 is probably going to be your best option with Salah and Kane partnering Broja or Son, perhaps, if you've got Son instead of Kane. If I had a lot of transfers, I would consider bringing a Leicester asset. They only play another twice before the international break, though, and I'm sure there'll be other jump-on points after the international break to increase ahead of Leicester's going to have some single game days. I think that's almost a guarantee further down the line. But I'd just like to pick up more information there and perhaps play the volume of fixtures in the shorter term more.
I think if you were, maybe doing a, as you said, you've had a lot of transfers and maybe daisy chaining onto one for like a couple of games because they'd have a 2-0 over a few teams. But I think the problem when I looked at the fixtures is their third and then fourth fixtures are very, very spread. So their third fixture after Leeds is not till the following Sunday. And then the one after that is not till the following Sunday again. So you're not really getting that, that 4 for 2 or 4 for 1. It's very spread. So
and you're not bringing in the best. You're probably not bringing in the best captaincy option either. Like, I think people that own Pope wouldn't want to take the armband off Pope to put onto Maddison or Tielemans. Perhaps if you're chasing, but you know that you're going massively against the grain then by doing that. And then, although they host Leeds on Saturday, I'm pretty sure Salah's going to be the most captain's player there as well. It's just I like Tielemans. I think he's like a perfect Sky asset. The timing just isn't perfect for me, I don't think.
I think the only kind of player that I would maybe go for a Leicester player, and again, it is a complete daisy chain. If you were moving on, if you had someone you just wanted to get rid of, say, and you're going for Burnley and then going for Leeds, and then you would daisy chain on to either an Arsenal or a Man City player next Sunday, maybe a risky one, like, I don't know, Mahrez, or maybe, someone like that, or even a defender, or going for someone like Saka, as you said, or Gabriel. I can kind of understand it, but again, even then, you're hoping really that in the 2 games that those players are going to score, the necessary amount of points to maybe worth a transfer. But yeah, I'm personally not I personally feel like it's forcing it a little, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because you have transfers in the bank, or you need, if you're hitting a point where you're really frustrated that you're not moving anywhere. Like, at my rank 244, I'm pretty alright because I'm same as you, in terms of things like mini leagues and stuff. I know I'm not going to kind of win the game, and I'm hoping my extra transfers will just kind of organically help me get somewhere towards, was top 100 now, which will do me. But if you have got grand designs, of making lots of ground up, or you're behind your mini leagues, you need to take some risks. I think it is, but I feel if not, then it's just doing it almost out of boredom. Maybe I don't know. I can see the traction of the Leeds game, but again, you would get under the new manager now that we're not going to see the same Leeds team that we've seen over the last fortnight. You would guess, his first job surely has got to be to stop conceding 5 and 6 goals nearly every game. Think that, Paul? Do you think that's?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in terms of this evening, there, it's again a bit of a dead rubber, I think, in terms of captaincy. So let's just have a look forward then towards next week. Saturday the 5th, Leicester versus Leeds. So obviously, if you were going for a Leicester player, this is the one to really target. This Leeds one, the 12:30 game. Wolves against Palace, Norwich, Brentford, Newcastle, Brighton, Burnley, Chelsea, Villa, Southampton, Liverpool, and West Ham. You'd assume probably Salah best captaincy option.
Yeah, and my observation here is that for those that are perhaps considering a Liverpool double up and have only went for one defender, it's not a great jump on opportunity. And similarly, the Chelsea, probably even more prominently, playing on the Saturday is not ideal to try and. They only have 3, even though they're getting the extra Norwich game, or you would think if they beat Luton, which they're favourites to do, that they'll get the Norwich game, or Norwich beat Liverpool in the FA Cup. Then Chelsea's only got 3 games before the international break as well. And whilst I definitely want a Chelsea asset, if that game had been a Sunday and getting 3 games in as opposed to just the 2, or not losing a player that's not yet played that game week, it's not ideal.
Oh yeah, because obviously, I'm looking at the planner, but I'm looking at that other Norwich game, but that's the Norwich game 19th of March that's going to move, isn't it? So they're going to have 3 games in very quick succession within,
and then they'll have the
week.
And then they'll have the 2-week international break as well, injuries and such like there. So it's one reason why I'm not steaming into Chelsea as much as I know others are potentially.
Yeah, it's probably worth just worth noting this actually, isn't it? Is that the FA Cup games that are taking place week now? I think there's maybe a couple this evening, a few tomorrow, and one on Thursday.
Yep.
Will impact that final weekend, won't it, before the international break as well, in terms of moving games. We're obviously talking now with what we know could actually change a little bit, couldn't it? Just to go back, sorry, Paul, we did have a few questions I missed in the chat just about this evening's game with Burnley and Leicester. Firstly, Paul Jones, is a United asset to a Leicester one tonight? Does that make more sense? And I think that does for me, with United's next games being City, Spurs, and Liverpool before the break. I can probably see some value there. What do you think about that one?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So Leicester have 4 games before the break, and as does Arsenal. There's a few other teams that have 4 as well. Those that don't blank in Sky Game Week 32, which is for those that go on FPL Game Weeks, is Game Week 30, which is the one that's going to have all the blanks from the FA Cup games. Leicester play in that game week as well as still having the remaining fixture here. So they get their 4 there, and Arsenal get their 4 from Sunday the 6th. There is other teams that would potentially have 4 fixtures, all depending on the outcomes of those FA Cup games.
If you had Pope and Tielemans this evening, asks George Parker, who would you captain? I know who you would captain, Paul.
Right, yeah. If you're looking to if you're accepting that you'll go down in rank if Pope outscores Tielemans, but your main objective is to try and climb as opposed to consolidate, then Tielemans is a good shout.
Depends whether he's defending or attacking, right? But Pope does have form in these single game days, doesn't he? He seems to pull it out. I don't think it's a coincidence. No, I don't think it's a coincidence. You do think it's a coincidence. We asked this question a few weeks ago, didn't I, about these, the keepers and certain teams who perform in single game days, and Pope for me is one. I think like Leicester score in nearly every game, but I think there's a good chance of Burnley keeping a clean sheet this evening.
Yeah. Leicester are on a really poor run away from home as well. That'll probably factor part of it. Yeah, my thing about Burnley is that in the second half of the season, they always perform better, and it's coincidence that they seem to have single game days in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
I think is
fair enough. Stephen Murray Bruce said, absolute pleasure watching you live. Great to have you with us, Stephen. But he's not bringing in Vardy tonight. He can't cope with the ups and downs. Obviously, if Vardy starts, and AD doesn't have anyone for the scene, is it worth bringing someone in or skipping it?
You get four Leicester games before the international break guaranteed, so they play that, and they might have a standalone fixture. I could be wrong on this, but I thought that there was, even though. No, apologies. They play on Sunday, the 20th of March, and just now that's the only guaranteed game to be on Sunday, the 20th of March as well. So you're covering yourself off for a captain from now if you make the move early.
Good shout. Good point from John Maloney. Vardy back now, so no pens for Tielemans. That's Vardy's. You would guess if Vardy starts, you'd probably pay 70 minutes, you guess, wouldn't you? First game back. Yeah. So and Tielemans has been known, hasn't he, to score pens at the end of the games. But yeah, it is a good point there. On to Sunday the 6th of March. Watford play Arsenal. So this is one you mentioned, a potential hop-on spot for Arsenal players. And Man City play Man United. Firstly, captain Paul for that day?
Yeah, it'll be Cancelo. Pretty straightforward for me. If you own Gabriel, I think Watford's tightened up at the back, so I probably wouldn't captain Saka even if I brought him in to try and as a differential. He might be able to help with your team structure and moving towards that 5-3-2 as well for those looking at him. But Gabriel would be a good captaincy shout, but I don't think I'll be veering off Cancelo for that game.
I think the fact that Spurs beat Man City last weekend has done Sky Fantasy Manager a bit of a favour in terms of it's blown it wide open now, haven't it? And this Man City Man United game now becomes a real must-win game for Man City, doesn't it? Whereas maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe wouldn't have been as important had Liverpool not done what they'd done. So I think in terms of having Cancelo and Laporte, probably a bit more. You can get rid of them to get. You can get rid of Laporte to maybe go for the extra gains for some teams, but I think I would have been tempted to had the gap been 6, 7, 9 odd points, but the fact now that it's down to 3 now, isn't it? And they play each other in a couple of weeks as well. City can't afford to drop any points, which is fantastic for us in this game. I think it just makes it a lot more predictable, like it was a few seasons ago. Remember a few seasons ago when it went to the final day, and what was the points? Like 98 points and 97. It's actually ridiculous. But they kept playing their strongest teams all the way through every single week, Liverpool and City. Hopefully we'll get that again this year because it just makes it far more exciting for the league, obviously, but a lot more predictable for Sky managers as well. Yeah, so Saka mentioned there, Paul. Is it so Saka and Gabriel? No love for anyone else? No kind of jump on Ramsdale maybe off Pope or anything like that? Or
definitely Pope to Ramsdale would be an option there as well. Arsenal do play after Pope the following week, so you can move on to Ramsdale, but you're not actually gaining a fixture from Pope to Ramsdale because Pope plays Brentford on the Saturday after before Arsenal play Leicester on the Sunday.
Cool. Okay. And then just to touch on the midweek games briefly, we will be back ahead of the second raft of these anyway. But Monday, the 7th of March, Spurs versus Everton. Got to think that Kane's ownership is going to look like the ownership and form, in all fairness. I thought he was absolutely sensational against Leeds. You don't see many performances like that. It was the Kane of old, wasn't it? He's going to be an incredibly popular captain there, Spurs against Everton. And this is the interesting one now for Thursday, the 10th of March. Southampton played Newcastle, Wolves, Watford, Leeds and Villa. Now, looking at those 6 teams there, and, 3 or 4 of those teams, this is why when I was maybe thinking of jumping off either Ward-Prowse or Coutinho or maybe, even Kilman or maybe Rafinha or kind of wherever it is to try and bolster up the Chelsea backline, they all play on the same night because the Chelsea-Norwich game is very likely to slot in on this day as well. So it makes it difficult. And this, again, it was when I looked at this fixture batch where I kind of looked and thought there's just no natural transfer, no real obvious, move from, Coutinho to Rudiger or Ward-Prowse to Rudiger or something along those lines. They'll play on the same night. Is that your thought on Chelsea at the moment, or do you see any other kind of natural hop-on points?
No, I think I'm exactly the same. I'm willing to accept that by picking up Rudiger and or Thiago Silva, that I'm not going to make any ground by getting on Chelsea defenders before everyone, because the effective ownership of the Chelsea defence will more than likely be over 100% at that point in time. I can imagine Pope to Mendy being a popular move there too. But yeah, I just with there only being 2 fixtures for Chelsea before the international break, is a reason that's kind of veering me off that.
Yeah, just looking after the break as well. Chelsea do play, I think, on both Saturdays as it stands, which is maybe another reason to think about, right? Because obviously you get the 3 Chelsea games pre-overhaul, but obviously because that 4th one is straight after on the Saturday and the following Saturday as well, as it stands. Obviously I think if that was on the Sunday, and other teams are having as many games, may have jumped off. May not have jumped in as hard. Now we've been talking about this since November or December. This jumping on Chelsea defence. Is it as obvious now as you think? Maybe, potentially Saturday, even though they play on Saturday along with everyone who you be maybe replacing them for, or is Thursday one? And I think for me, I suppose my kind of thought is, I can see maybe my initial plan was to bring in quite a few. The way the fixtures fall now, obviously they have the 3 games in quick succession, then they have that a bit of a break, and as you say, the international break is in there as well. I'm probably not as wholehearted as I want. I probably will still do it later on when the fixtures kind of fall in that manner. And I suppose that for those who are looking to just, they're thinking, right, screw it, I'm not making any ground. I'm nowhere in my mini league. I need to do something different. I still do think there is merit, because if they can keep those 3 clean sheets on the bounce, and Man City potentially rest a player or 2, Liverpool don't keep a clean sheet or 2, for example, there is merit, and you can gain some points incredibly quickly by jumping on. What are your thoughts on Chelsea defence?
If I was doing that, I think that on Saturday I would just make the moves on Saturday. So you mark 4 Chelsea defenders that you want. So Thiago Silva, Rudiger. Actually, maybe the 3rd defender might actually be a bit of, if you don't see the starting lineup, that might actually be a bit of concern, because I'm not too sure, other than those 2, who would definitely start. Reece James played 70 minutes when he was expected to play 20 minutes, which makes me think that he's not nailed for all the Chelsea games. We know that he likes to rotate Alonso.
I think Mendy is probably the only other one I would say. I think those 3.
If you're looking to make up ground, and to do that, you want the fixture volume as well as how great the fixtures are over a short spell. You almost want to move Bowen on Saturday. It's not my style, and it's definitely not what I'm advising people to do, because that's not what I'm going to do. But if I was looking to make the most out of the Chelsea defensive assets, and I'm looking to potentially climb rank, I think that's the play that I would make.
It's a strange one because we know we're going to end the season probably with a fair few Chelsea players in our team, maybe Arsenal, maybe Leicester, maybe these sorts of teams who've got plenty of games left to play for. But the way the fixtures have fallen, they don't seem to have fallen in a naturally for it, and you're kind of looking to force it, like Bowen out for a Chelsea defender. Okay, Bowen's away to Liverpool, right? And I know that's a tough fixture. But there's no guarantees whatsoever that someone like Rudiger is going to outscore Bowen on that day, is it? You're making a conscious decision for the risk.
And you're probably not going to captain Rudiger because you're going to captain the majority will captain Salah as well. Here's a question for you, Fergi, right? So up to the international break, I know that I'm making a big deal of the international break. I just think that injuries happen over an international break and information gets... You get more information over an international break before coming back. So for me, it feels like a natural next kind of stop, like kind of line in the sand of where I'm planning to next. You've got Man City play 2 games. You've got Chelsea play 4 games. Liverpool play 3. What did I say? Arsenal play 4. Arsenal play 4. Chelsea play 3. Liverpool play 3. Man City play 2. And people will be holding Kilman. If you, who has 4 games in that period of time as well, because they play on the blank game week. If you were resetting your defence right now, as say you had an overhaul for your defence, doesn't need to be personnel specifically. How would your including goalkeeper, how would your 6-man defence look in terms of breakdown of teams? Do you think?
I definitely go for volume. I think for Chelsea. I think in terms of the volume and quality of fixtures, it's going to be Burnley, Norwich, and Newcastle, either in that order or different order, depends on the FA Cup results. Probably Arsenal because of fixtures and quality of defence. I wouldn't just go for volume. I'm not going to go for Leicester defence, for example. Leicester defence is absolute junk. But I take your point. I probably wouldn't go for Man City, especially as United are kind of prone to scoring. Also, they play away to Palace, and Palace have done them a couple of times in recent years, well, haven't they? So, but I take your point about going up into the national break, a potential 4-2, for example. But the problem is we're not getting the overhaul anyway. It completely carries on, and I think it's pretty easy to just.
Well, this is exactly what I've been thinking about the potential, 8-for-3s and 7-for-2s and where those transfers are. But as the player that I'm bringing in, because unless I'm moving them on to someone else, which is then 2 transfers each time, is it someone that I would potentially want long term? And that's what I'm starting to think in any of my moves. Are they coming in at the right price point? So I like Gabriel's price point, 8.2 million. I like Rudiger's price point. I think he's 9.1. I think it's been a while. not on him in 4 weeks. Forgetting not looked at Chelsea, but I think he's 9.1. And Thiago Silva's like 8.6. But like those 3 have all got really good price points, and therefore I could see myself holding them all long term.
Do you think there's a risk of So bear in mind, I've got 16 left. I think I'm guessing you're roughly the same. Probably 16, 17, something like that. And we're approaching game week. Was it 28 now? 10 weeks left. Do you think there's a risk, as with this Leicester move, just as an example now? Bear in mind, we're also going to want Leicester long term. I think there's a risk of us, and I've never done this before in Sky, so I don't know the answer of potentially missing opportunities because we're being a bit too frugal. Because you've always gone on the thing, haven't you, of transfer a game week. Well, there's 10 or 11 game weeks left now, and 16 or 17 left. That's already 1.5. It doesn't look like we're planning maybe 1, maybe 2 before the break.
Well, I'm planning 2 or 3 next week. So, but I think with, like you said, 16, right? I think with 16, that even though there's only 11 or 12 game weeks left, that the average volume of fixtures is actually kind of 14, 15 as well. So if you do use a couple next week, it balances back down to that kind of one per average volume of games remaining, and I think like that's what we've talked about quite a bit this season. So
interesting stuff. Sam Brinley says Sarr captain on that Thursday. Missed that one with the on game week 30. Potentially, Douglas Fisher asks, still has Webster. Should I transfer to a Chelsea defender for this weekend? If so, which one? Funds not an issue. I probably would, to be honest. I just go to Rudiger. Brighton got their home to Newcastle.
Their fixtures aren't great afterwards. They do double the following week. Spurs and Liverpool. And actually, their game against Man City will be rearranged. Webster just seems to picks up one niggly injury that seems to last longer than expected, and there's always kind of a cloud of doubt over him. It always seems to happen like once a season. It's a bit concerning.
You can get a jump on people. If Rudiger is expected to keep a clean sheet against Burnley and gets passing 9 or 10 points, really nice start.
What do you think? What do you think Rudiger's ownership will be after next Thursday's game? So it could jump up significantly on Saturday, but after next Thursday's game against, like, saying that we're presuming unfairly that Chelsea is going to be playing Norwich next Thursday, perhaps. If the Chelsea-Norwich game happens next Thursday, what do you think Rudiger's ownership is on Friday morning in the top 1,000?
Bear in mind, I did look earlier. It's like 1% or even less than that at the moment.
Yeah.
I think.
I was starting from zero. I was going to. Yeah. I assumed it was zero anyway. So
I'll go for 41%.
I think so. I think it'll be something like 75.
Really? You think?
Yeah.
750 in the top 1,000 will bring Rudiger in.
Yeah, I think so.
And obviously assuming the FA Cup.
You get, assuming that game goes ahead, and even if it's not 750 transfers, because he'll likely pick up at minimum 5 points. You get some people that are hovering around underneath the top 1,000 that move into the top 1,000 with that as well.
Fire and Blood says Kilman transfer was a complete waste, whereas Fintan says, is it too late for Kilman? I would say, just looking at the fixtures, so the next 6 fixtures for Wolves, home to Palace, home to Watford, away to Everton, home to Leeds, home to Villa, away to Newcastle. They are a beautiful run of fixtures.
I'm not overly bothered about the fact that he's picked up 1 point and then 4 points. I think I'm all right with it.
Lovely run of fixtures.
His next 4 fixtures, you get the cover if Rafinha doesn't play. Some people might not own Rafinha now. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, at the moment he's my captain there on the 18th. I think I'm gonna watch Leeds play. I took him out a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember who for now, but I'm gonna watch Leeds play against Leicester. But I do like their upcoming run, offensive run, home to Villa, home to Norwich. Away to Wolves will be tough. Home to Southampton, away to Watford. I do like Leeds fixtures. So I'm gonna watch them against Leicester, see how they look. But I'm tempted to bring him back. I got to be honest, because he was really unfortunate against Spurs, and he's just a magical player. And I took him out because he got taken off at half time, and he didn't start the next game, didn't he? But he came on and scored the goals. So it's going to be interesting to see now what happens with the Leicester game.
A midfield 3 of kind of Rafinha, Ward-Prowse, and maybe Jacob Ramsey or something like that would kind of be ideal just now to tick you over, I think. Don't think there's any real need to have Gallagher and Bowen at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at some questions. Dan asks, I know we hate him, but if Vardy starts tonight, is he an option? Leeds at the weekend. Nice 3-for-1 on Man City players. If you're attacking, Paul, right? Is that the answer?
Yeah, and you can do that move that you suggested there, Fergi. So if you've got someone that you want longer term, say it's Saka or say it's Gabriel or someone, or you don't own Kane yet, like moving on to Vardy and then on to Kane on the Monday night if you have lots of transfers might be a fairly reasonable daisy chain to move on there. I won't be going for him, and he's burnt me. Maybe not as many times as Dan, but I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not too dissimilar.
Jay Dalgano says he put continuing an overhaul, worked well for 1 week, now looks a 2-point merchant. Time to ditch. I do think one of the reasons why he was popular at overhaul is they knew we were going to have rearranged fixtures, and they do have quite a lot of decent fixtures in succession now, don't they? So
they've got 4 as well. Yeah, I wouldn't be. Yeah, the only reason if I was picking my midfield 3, I'd pick Ramsey as just the budget as opposed to anything else.
And they get Leeds again next week. Next Thursday? Who he performed so well against a few weeks ago. Yeah. Luke Ndien, Sky has felt so flat since Christmas, New Year. Barely any gains anywhere. Do you think chain transfers can be more effective than the next lot of released fixtures? Really good question there,
Luke. I think so. But I also think that picking those midfielders that have got high ceilings but are inconsistent is another approach as well. If your risk appetite's open to accepting that you might be picking a player up at the start of a run of 2s like you and Coutinho, I think, Fergi.
Indeed. Johnny K, do you have a short list of a few differentials that could result in a decent rank rise for those who are on the top 500?
Yeah, so I spoke about a few before. Mount 0.1%, 9.2 million. Gabriel 8.5% owned, 8.2 million. I think he's still been massively overlooked. Thiago Silva is only in 2 teams in the top 1,000, 8.6 million, and Saka 2.8% owned. I think he's 8.5 million. As I say, like, to not sound like a hypocrite, I know that like Mount and Saka aren't my type of players that I go for, but if I was looking for differentials to potentially propel me up, particularly in Saka's case, he has got the form to back that up. 61 points in the last 8 games, 7.5 points per game. I think that's a fairly decent return.
Before, I think I prefer like blocks rather than individual players personally. I think I prefer to, because if you're picking an individual player, they're low owned likely because they're just not a great option at the moment, right? And, someone like Rudiger, okay, he's low owned at the moment purely because he hasn't been playing, but, as you mentioned, you think he's going to go up to 75, right? And he will likely go up to 95, 97, 98 over the coming weeks because he's one of the best players in the game, right? But I prefer blocks to individual kind of Hail Marys personally. So I think I'd go a bit more on, you could have gone, I think you mentioned it, and okay, it didn't work out last week, but Ward-Prowse and Broja, look at their fixtures coming up now. They've got Villa, Newcastle, Watford, really nice fixtures. Maybe go, that Chelsea block of 3, if they keep 3 clean sheets in that period, and you're on maybe 4 defenders or 3 defenders and a keeper, and they keep clean sheets, that's like 40 points a pop, right? A potential for 100 plus points in a week.
What about a Ramsdale Gabriel double up? Get 4 games from the Sunday game. You get your players playing already, so you get your Pope playing and someone else playing on the Saturday, and then you move on. You've got double Arsenal defence, and they keep a clean sheet. You're getting 9. Probably 10 from Gabriel, 19 points.
Just the fixtures for Arsenal, which is why I'm not maybe as excited as you. Leicester, Liverpool, I fancy both of those to score against Arsenal. And then Villa, I'm not sure if that's going to move the FA Cup, but if not, Villa another team.
Well, they play that game goes ahead because Arsenal and Villa are both out, so they get 4 games up until international break.
But as I say, after Watford, Leicester, Liverpool, and Villa for me are 3 games. They're very, very unpredictable. I don't mind the Saka move, maybe, for example, but I'd be surprised if they kept clean sheet against Leicester or Liverpool. Like I say, Leicester the kind of team who tend to just score every game. But we'll see. And and Liverpool obviously are chasing down the title, so that's why I'm not that bothered for it. That's why I prefer the Chelsea, that little block of fixtures for Chelsea personally. But Yeah, so it's tough. It's tough going at the moment. I think this next week or two is a bit, a bit bland and predictable still. But as I've said a few times over the last few weeks, I think at the end of the season, the people who are successful and finish where they want to finish are the ones who just coast through these kind of weeks and then take the opportunities with both hands when they arrive, instead of trying to force opportunities. Incredibly boring way of playing fantasy football, but effective, I think. Would you agree, Paul, or do you think this be maybe a bit more scope to be a bit more exciting this week?
I just think it's if you're willing to accept the risk of those high ceiling players, or you're willing to use the volume of transfers required to set up a block, then those are two viable opportunities to propel you up, as they'll be viable later on down the line as well. But if it's going to be a point where you get bored from not taking much action and not seeing your moves, then I would do those moves play one of those two ways to make up the ground now. If you think that you're going to get itchy fingers if you see a line up at some point in time and force yourself into making a move that way, it's perhaps not part of your longer term strategy.
One more team we haven't mentioned yet, and I was going to mention, Glenn has just chucked him in the chat now. Newcastle, who have improved in all fairness, and they have 4 fixtures coming up in a time that a lot of teams only have a couple of fixtures. They're home to Brighton, away to Southampton, away to Chelsea, away to Everton, so 3 are away. Glenn has put the Vravka Kraft double up Fergie. I think if you're looking to go completely rogue, chuck in a couple of Newcastle defenders potentially, but I think that's probably Hail Mary stuff, right? And I should caveat that, because every time I say things like this, people come back, I can't believe you suggested double Newcastle defence. It's not something I'm actually advocating. It's just another option of pure fixture volume.
A few seasons back, even though they were doing poorly, Newcastle goalkeepers were scoring massive amount of points just based on shot volume. They were constantly picking up tier two saves.
Yeah, no, agree. And I think that, like I say, it's not something I'd advocate, it's not something I'll be doing, but if you're absolutely desperate, just want to take a real punt on some incredibly low on players, fixture volume, or fixtures.
Yeah, I think Willock's the one that's in a bit of form now. Again, solve some of the midfield problems that we've got. 7.8 million. Over the last 4 games, he's had 3 shots on target, 2 goals, picked up tackling bonus twice. And in the 2 games he didn't pick up tackling bonus, he got 3 successful tackles and 2 successful tackles as well. So he's been unlucky to not pick up more bonus from that perspective.
We have to rattle through these questions. We spent ages on that one there, but it was a really good chat, Paul. Cheeky, if you're looking at Chelsea defenders to make gains, 3 is the magic number. Mendy, Rudiger, and Thiago, we mentioned earlier. Should Reece James be considered? I don't know if anyone saw it earlier, but manager did say, I think he said Reece James, Mason Mount, I can't remember the third player, have all are all a bit tired. Excuse me, my phone's ringing. Yeah, apologies for that. I'm not sure if it's coming through on there. Is it coming through or not?
No, I was like, it's like, was it am I phoning you?
No, it keeps coming through. I'm not sure if it's coming through. Apologies. Reece James, not for me yet. I don't think. Maybe after the break, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, he's scarred a lot of people towards the end of his tenure in Sky Managers teams as well. He wasn't getting bonus nearly as much as what he had done when he first came to. When he first had a bit of form earlier on this season.
And Darren S, with Chelsea out of the league, will they rotate more with Champions League in mind, meaning keeping Man City and Liverpool a better choice? So completely the other side. Tough one, right?
I guess the beauty with their formation, is that they need 3 centre halves playing, and Rudiger seems to be the fittest, and doesn't pick up many injuries, so you could perhaps see him playing the most.
With most covering Newcastle v Wolves with Kilman, is Everton versus Newcastle a skip? Would the transfer be better spent elsewhere?
More than likely. I think so. At present, I'm not considered doing it, but there is options. Like I said, like Gallagher and Bowen, depending on how your team's set up, Gallagher and Bowen seem dispensable just now, and that they don't have many captaincy days coming up. There's opportunities to move back onto them later on down the line. I'm thinking more particularly from Bowen's perspective, because after the international break, they play on the Sunday. So you could move back off a player playing on the Saturday and move back onto Bowen for their game against Everton. So there's definitely opportunities to kind of move on to Newcastle players like Willock, if you wanted to do that. What was it? I think somebody worked out as like an 8 for 3 earlier on.
I think to wait and see, because I think both teams are in a transition, aren't they? Newcastle have definitely improved defensively. Everton had one good result, one bad result. So we're not really sure. I think I'm going to wait and see until the evening, and I might be tempted to, if Everton do have, again, I'm not sure on the FA Cup, they do have Watford on the weekend, so potentially an Everton attacker, but then Newcastle have improved defensively. So again, it's not sure if it's just forcing it a little to have one for having one's sake.
There's good opportunity on the Sunday to move on to players, but then I just don't know which player I'd want to move on to. I think. Yeah,
and both teams after the international break both play on the Sunday as well. So it's not even you can have like a quick 3-for-1 or something. They both play on a Sunday, so you're likely to be stuck with them. So it's a tough one. It's I'll probably see how it goes, and we can talk about it more next week, obviously. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a wait and see. John Maloney in the chat: how many City defenders to keep for now? Just think about that, Paul. Just sorry, I am tempted to shift the port on potentially next week, but then I do look a bit down the line. Not sure. What do you think? I think I want him back. I think I want him back is the thing. So it's balancing up whether to take him out and put him back, or whether just take him out and leave him out. That's my dilemma at the moment.
Yeah, I've got Laporte as well. But it was nice to get his 10-point return at the weekend, with a lot of people having moved him on to Kilman the weekend before. They've not got that many fixtures. They've got 2 before the international break. The first 2 after the international break are Burnley away, which I find that's a good fixture, and then they play Liverpool the following week. The week after that, if City were playing on the Sunday, that might be a good opportunity to bring back a City defender if you're moving off one for perhaps if you use your make way for Rudiger or your second Chelsea defender, if that's the way you're going as well. It's difficult. Depending on what the rest of your team is as well, and whoever else is dispensable. But I think if you're moving on to Chelsea, I think it's viable to move on to a Chelsea option. I think that's what I'm saying.
I think I would wait until it feels obvious. I think that's my kind of takeaway from this week, is everything we're talking about is kind of feels a bit like we're forcing it because we're bored almost, or we want to make gains, whereas the opportunities will present themselves at some point. I personally think it's who blinks first. FPL Hambo: when's it time to lose Bowen? Sounds like a good time to go against his ownership with Coutinho or a Chelsea defender.
Yeah, whoever I was moving Bowen on to, if I was moving Bowen on after Saturday, would be a player that I want long term. And then when you're bringing Bowen back, so it's not like you're taking Bowen out to bring in a player like Willock to then move Willock back to Bowen. It would be, I'm bringing in Rudiger, and then later on down the line, when I want to get Bowen back, I'll get rid of a different player in my team that I no longer want.
We've had just a couple more questions on Chelsea. Dan asks, how many Chelsea players would be in your team from Saturday versus Burnley? For reasons unknown, is Jorginho too much of a Sky FF risk or a viable way into the return of Chelsea? We haven't mentioned midfields actually. Kovacic looked fantastic, and I thought final on the weekend. Dave, simple goal. Chelsea defensive assets will be popular. It's a case of jump on two, ignore altogether. Otherwise, you'll be caught in a twilight zone of mediocrity where you can't win but can only lose to one camp or the other. Hashtag twilight zone of mediocrity. So just a few questions there on Chelsea and midfielders. Paul, I know we've touched on defenders.
Yep. I know I mentioned Mount earlier on as someone that would potentially be explosive, but get a run of twos out of them. Just Chelsea midfielders just don't appeal to me at all in the game. I think there's too much rotation goes on there. Anytime that I would want perhaps be wanting a captaincy out of them, you're not guaranteed to be starting the game. Well, Kovacic, Kante, and Jorginho, got Mount that can play in the middle as well, Loftus-Cheek. And what I think it was Dan Slater mentioned earlier on about Chelsea potentially rotating further down the line if Chelsea go far in the Champions League as well. So you've got like Loftus-Cheek might start getting more minutes in there as well. Just it wouldn't be for me.
I like Kovacic. I gotta be honest. I think a 7.8. I think he was awesome before he got injured in the first half of the season. Played nearly every game. I think he plays most games, if not all games. I really like Kovacic. I think he'd be coming. You know, when we finally potentially jump on Chelsea, I think he'd be one I'll jump on. Maybe not pre-international break, obviously, because the jump on point is potentially not really there. But after, when it presents itself, I think he's one for me, and maybe Jorginho as well. I just think they're nailed, absolutely nailed for passing. Probably good for tackles, and they get the odd tackle returns. Jorginho on penalties, Kovacic with a few attacking returns start the season as well. I think they're good options actually. I think they'll be part of a pylon. You know, you mentioned this 2-point midfielders. I think they're kind of 5 or 6 point midfielders.
Yeah.
Neil, please discuss Trent. Trent in 12 games getting clean sheets and passes versus Vardy in 15 games getting goals and shots bonus. Who scored more, and would you consider it worth the sub? We also had another question about Trent actually. I can't find it exactly.
Is he inexpensive?
Yeah, is he inexpensive
comfort blanket?
Yeah.
But I think like for a guy that plays right back, like how much are you relying on him getting attacking returns? Like I think if you look at this I always think this is a problem looking at small sample sizes. So if you look at Overhaul, his returns like Van Dijk and Matip's doubled his returns, but you're looking at that smaller sample size. There's going to be periods of time where Trent outscores Van Dijk because he assists probably double as much, more than double as much as what Van Dijk scores points. Like he scores goals is what I mean. So I think it's just a small, like you're looking at such a small sample size that it's pretty hard to gauge.
I agree. You just got to leave him in, I think, and while the fixtures are there, the volume of fixtures and quality of fixtures are both there still. Like, I've been looking at all formats and, I've been looking and I'm just thinking, but, they just have these lone games where he's ripe for a massive haul, like, ripe for an 18-pointer. And you'll have taken him out for someone who just gets 3 consecutive 2s, for example, and you just, it's those moves that hurt. It's those ones where you think, why didn't I just leave one of the best players in the world in my team? Just leave him and forget about him. Like Trent, Cancelo, Salah, probably the 3. Leave them. It's not worth the risk because every time you watch them play, so scary. They're so scary when you don't own them up. They're such fantastic players and fantasy assets. So Benny Blanco, evening Benny, has Paul just come straight from paintballing? You want to know. Love that. For those listening on the podcast version, Paul has got transparent
like Joe 90s
frames.
or Timmy Mallets.
Brilliant. They're kind of like my sort of shape frames, but they're a bit thicker and they're very transparent, aren't they, Paul? But yeah, as Benny says, just come back from paintballing. Billy Anderson, called you boys live. Good stuff. All aboard the Vardy hype train. Ooh, I'm not sure about that. Mind you, again, it's one of those. When you see the starting lineup, it'll be, oh my goodness, but they got Leeds on Saturday. Oh, it's for those, isn't it? It's tough to hold off. I think the way to Burnley game for me doesn't excite me. It's the Leeds game, which if it was Leeds this evening, I think I'd be a bit more tempted with that additional Burnley game. But it's the other way around.
And if Liverpool were, I think if Liverpool weren't playing on Saturday, so that there was a real viable option for captain and Vardy as well, maybe that would be more tempting.
FF Thinker just finally asked, if you were to choose a new overhaul from now, who would be in it? A volume of games over quality of play? We kind of answered that earlier, didn't we, when we touched on the defence stuff? Just interested in your view on that, Paul, because I gave a couple of my thoughts. What were yours?
Well, because you're in exactly the same position as what we're in that overhaul, and that I would pick Pope because his ownership's going to be so high, and then I'd need to captain him today. So Pope, Cancelo, I'd probably have Van Dijk over Trent for the saving, but not to the point that I would want to make a transfer to do it. But Cancelo, Van Dijk, I don't mind Kilman. I think his fixtures are really good,
he's
and
cheap
I think
as well, and he's an enabler.
Yeah, so Cancelo, Van Dijk, Kilman, Rudiger, Gabriel, or I know that you don't like Gabriel as much, maybe Thiago Silva to make up a 5-man defence there with Pope and goals. Midfield, Ward-Prowse, Ramsey, Rafinha, something like that would work. Salah, Kane, I think.
Yeah, so again, it's probably 8 or 9 of
pretty generic, but like I didn't pick my overhaul team to last 2 weeks. I picked it to run with for quite a bit anyway. So
indeed, we just got my current team now on screen. So I've got Pope for this evening, Cancelo, Trent, Laporte, Gilman, Gallagher, Bowen, Coutinho, Ward-Prowse, Salah, and Kane. You've got 16 transfers left. We'll have a quick look for next week. Like I say, there's nothing really stands out at me. I can do Bowen to Rudiger, which I need to probably decide when to do that. I'll probably do it Thursday, I think, because Bowen does play Liverpool on Saturday. So I'll probably do that on Thursday if I do it. Quite happy with Coutinho in the short term. They got volume of fixtures. They've also got the game next Thursday. Ward-Prowse, good option, good fixtures. Laporte is maybe one. Could dispense of Laporte. I haven't probably looked at who to exactly. Man City win their FA Cup. A few teams will have 3 for 1, even though Man City do play straight away after the national break on the Saturday. So, but I might be tempted there to do Laporte to someone when those fixtures are known. We get like a 3 for 1 or someone potentially, and I could move to any player because I'll be on a 5-3-2 then. I could do any attacking player. I can move to any defensive player, for swap. So I got something to think about there. Under 9 million. I'll take a look at the time, but again, I'm not trying to force it really because nothing stands out to me. That's just my team at the moment. Hub, £500 league. Christopher Sharkey down to 10th. Maurice Weeks down to 9th. 8th, Jack Smiley up. Marius Ionita up 4 places. Well done, Marius, into the top 10. Michael Shipley down to 6th. Oliver Colgan down to 5th. Ryan West up to 4th. James Ingram up to 3rd. Maurice Weeks in 2nd with his other team. Liam Stevens, as he has been for the vast majority of the season. Brogscales FC, still top. Very, very well played. Liam and the Four Nations League. I was going to skip this just to piss Dan off, but I won't. Just looking at the teams that are in with a bit of shout. Ian Parrin's team currently 6th, with plenty of transfers in hand on 2-3-3-0. Liam 2-3-5-5. My second team has caught my top team the exact same points, 2-3-6-4, and then Dan Cox is 2 points ahead on 2-3-6-6. So Dan has jumped above me. Well done, Dan. but Paul McAnulty still flying high, 2429, ranked 47th overall. And surely is going to take the Four Nations League this year off Liam Dorian. Liam, you better get that. You better do some overtime for the postage for the trophy. But we will cover that off as we come to the end of the season. And that is it for us for this evening. Apologies, I don't think it was a very incredibly exciting one, Paul, to be honest. But I think it's just a sign of the times, to be honest. It's just wait and see. Maybe move to Rudiger.
Maybe more exciting next week or the next couple of weeks, with there being 3 and 4 midweek fixtures coming in play.
Yeah, agree. But thank you so much, Paul. And thank you for taking the time to root out some differentials. And thank you all for watching live. Thank you all for watching back, and thank you for listening. Your continued support is much appreciated. Paul, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty1, MCANULTY.
My Twitter handle is at FFH_Fergi. Make sure you drop us both a follow. So this podcast and video on the Fantasy Football Hub, Sky and TFF YouTube channel, and also available on all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please click the like button. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast version. Drop in, give us 5 stars, leave some comments. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are at FFH_HQ, and our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_Sky. So please feel free to follow and ask any questions. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. If you haven't seen, we've had a significant facelift to the website. You'll find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, and everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof. We'll be back early next week, looking ahead to the remainder of Game Week 30 and to a bumper Game Week 31. Stay safe all, and goodbye for now.